So I said to my mom, I'd like to try the harp. And she's like, yeah, everybody does. You'll get over it. I'm like, no, what do you mean I'm going to just get over it? No, I really want to play the harp. And I'm not sure if I really did, but it was just the idea that it wasn't just an easy thing to do.
Something that I know both of us are passionate about because we've worked together is not just, how do I put this? Not just playing notes, not just learning tunes, not just learning Celtic music, but really making a beautiful sound. And that beautiful sound comes from that foundational technique.
I can cross borders with the harp. So in some ways I sort of came full circle with this idea of international relations and music, that it's all woven in together, that the harp can be a bridge. To do what you love, not what maybe you think you have to do. So many people say, well, they asked me to play for church and I'm not ready, or this or that. It's like, no, if you're not ready, don't. But do music you love, not what you think you should do. Yeah, here he is. Here's Lila.
Oh, hello.
And Lila's a beauty. And he doesn't know it's a girl's name. I wasn't even aware of that, so I wasn't thinking, I was just thinking night. And so, yeah, he's all black and he's beautiful.
Welcome to the How to Harp podcast, where your harp and your journey are always front and centre. I'm Heather Downey, harpist and founder of How to Harp, your online space for expert guidance and endless inspiration. Each week, we are here to empower, inspire, and encourage you, whether you're just beginning or many years into your harp adventure. From chats with world-class professionals to real stories from everyday harpists, to practical tips you can use right away. This podcast is all about helping you feel happy, confident, and fulfilled with your harp. This is episode 22, and today I am chatting with professional harpist Sunita Staneslow. Sunita has such a fascinating story, from her early musical life and love of travel to building a career that blends classical foundations with arranging, folk influences and deeply community-focused music making. In this episode, we talk about how she found her way to the harp, how travel shaped both her life and her musical direction, and what she's learned about sound, phrasing, and finding your own voice on the instrument. We also explore how the harp can become a bridge that connects people in really meaningful and human ways. Hello, Sunita, how are you today?
Hi, Heather. I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Like a bit chilly. I bet it's more chilly where you are, though.
Yeah, it's kind of rainy and dreary a bit. There's going to be high winds tomorrow, and I've got to take 2 ferries down to Lerwick. So I'm already looking at my app thinking, okay, is there going to be gusts? I'm playing in the Christmas concert for the choir and chamber orchestra, and I can't not show up. There's a piece that's just harp and choir. So I was already looking at my app, how windy is it going to be? But it's not too cold. I'm from Minnesota, where it gets very cold, but we don't have these high winds. It's still something I'm getting used to.
Oh yeah, that definitely takes time for sure. Amazing. Well, I'm so excited to be chatting to you today and delving into your background, because I know that you have got a really fascinating life story. You've been all over the place and I can't wait to get down into it. So maybe you can take us right back to where it all began and how you very, very first were introduced to the harp.
I was just thinking, it was cold also. So I grew up in Minnesota. And Minnesota in the United States is smack in the middle, north, it borders Canada. And so we're far from the sea, and it gets very cold in the winter. And I grew up on a street in St. Paul that had a lot of interesting people and musicians, and there were already 2 harpists on my street. But I wanted to play flute, and there was a couple that were flutists with the Minnesota Orchestra, and we had dinner with them, and I asked Adele, I said, I really want to play flute. I was in 2nd grade. And she brought out her flute and said, well, your fingers are too short. You should wait till, 4th or 5th grade and start in band like everybody else does. And my heart just sank, because we would get, through them, we would get like cheap tickets to the orchestra, and I was a melody person. I still am. And so I'm just drawn to the flute. And I eventually did learn flute and take it in band and took private lessons, and I still love the flute, although I don't play it anymore. And Adele said, well, why don't you play harp like Leah? And her daughter played harp. So I said to my mom, I'd like to try the harp. And she's like, yeah, everybody does. You'll get over it. I'm like, no, what do you mean I'm going to just get over it? No, I really want to play the harp. And I'm not sure if I really did, but it was just the idea that it wasn't just an easy thing to do. And so she said, look, we'll give you some lessons. So there was a high schooler that had a harp, and she was happy to teach me. So I walked to harp lessons, and I would come home with the music and open it on the couch, the sofa, and like be pretending to practice. Like, I'm really serious. And so my grandmother, or was maybe my great-grandmother, bought me a harp, from the music window. It wasn't anything hard to do, it was Minnesota. Anything driving distance from Chicago, Line and Healy, there were harps. So I started on a troubadour harp, and I liked it. I think it was more that I fell in love with it gradually, because it was special, because I could have melody and accompaniment. But I studied flute, and I started piano in 1st grade, so I was already playing piano, but that was more I don't know, just sort of in the background that I studied piano. So yeah, the harp sort of found me, or I think I should be more careful about, like, when I was telling my kids, like, no, you can't do this. So I was like, yeah, you want to learn how to do trapeze? Sure. But they always said yes to everything. And but I was driving around like crazy for my kids, all their activities. And my mom was kind of smart. I walked to harp lessons for years. Just walked to them. That was a good idea.
Yeah, very smart.
As a parent.
Very good. Okay, so you learned the piano, you learned the flute, and the harp alongside. So can you tell us a little bit about what music was actually going on around you? Like, what were your parents listening to as you grew up? Like, it's actually sometimes that early music is more our parents' interests, isn't it, than our own. So what music was around you? Yeah,
well, I guess a wide variety, and it still is for me. I love all kinds of music. And so we had a piano. My mom played it mainly, and my dad would plonk on it a little bit, and he had an accordion for a while. He started violin. He wasn't very good, but my mom wanted a harpsichord. So my parents bought a kit, and there was a harpsichord and a piano, and my mom would be practicing probably Scarlatti or something while I'm falling asleep. But on the record player, it would be, everything from the Beatles to PDQ Bach to Tom Lehrer to, Tijuana Brass. I mean, everything. So I guess I was raised in a family that loved music, and none of them were professional. So it was just the joy of music. And I think that's really what I imbued, was this idea that music is part of life. And I know friends that like have, very intense professional classical jobs, and their kids don't always do music because they see it as something that maybe is more stressful. And for me, music was just fun.
That's lovely. That's really nice. And so nice that you had parents who were trying different instruments and playing, and you saw people around you doing bits of practice and enjoying music. So it wasn't just listening to recordings, but it was listening to your family experiment and explore music.
Yeah, well, exactly. And so I have 2 brothers, and my younger brother played French horn for a while, and my but I think he was relegated to the basement to practice, and my brother learned bassoon. So the harp was in the salon. So the harp, like, sort of was front and center, and some of these instruments that can sound a bit less pleasing when you're starting were relegated to other rooms.
Of course, yeah. I mean, we're very lucky, aren't we, with a harp, because as soon as you start, it just sounds absolutely beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. Except that I don't think I learned to really tune it for about 5 years.
Oh, well, you're there now.
Right.
So you started studying the harp. At what point in time did you decide? Did you then go from high school into university to study the harp? What did you do after high school? So
sort of, kind of. I mean, so in high school, like in youth orchestra, I played flute and piccolo, and then at the very end, I switched to harp. And won a concerto contest, played harp and flute, and thought, oh, wow, this is kind of cool. And I wasn't sure I wanted it as a profession, because there's a difference between enjoying music versus turning it into a profession. And I even knew that then, although I became a musician. So I've always traveled and been interested in just how the world works. And I don't know, I went to India first when I was 10. My father taught Hindi, so I was already raised with a family that traveled and was interested in languages and different food and cultures. And I wanted to major in international relations. So I went to Tufts University in Boston area, which is really a respected university for international relations. They didn't have a harp department. So I took some music courses, and then I would take public transport, like really noisy public transport, the T, all the way up to Boston University. And I studied with Lucille Lawrence, who I'd taken lessons with at Tanglewood, which is a wonderful summer institute. So I had music as sort of like a minor, and I majored in international relations. But then for my junior year abroad, I went, half to India and then half to Paris, and I studied with Lily Laskin, who's French technique versus Lucille Lawrence, who's Salzedo. And but actually, I just loved it. Lily Laskin would just take me to concerts, and she was just really inspiring because she was so unpretentious. I was a little bit nervous, like, oh, will she take me as a student? And then you go into her apartment, and there's music everywhere and strings flying out of her harp because she never trimmed them. And this really petite woman who just was so, just so down to earth. And then I wanted to study with her in Nice in the summer, and because I wasn't really happy in Paris anyway. And then she ended up not going. I studied with a different teacher there, and it was kind of then classical and competitive. And I thought, here I am in Nice, I want to learn to scuba dive. So I learned to scuba dive. I mean, you can't practice all the time, right? Yeah. And then we'd have group lessons, and everyone was like pale white because they didn't leave their practice rooms, and then I had sunburn. So I like sort of stood out a bit already that, oh, maybe I don't practice enough. But I kept going back to international relations. I mean, so when I graduated, I decided I don't know what I want to do. Do I want to do something with maybe women's empowerment and health in poorer nations, or do I want to be a musician? So I thought, okay, I'm going to take 2 years off. And I went to Sri Lanka as a volunteer for an organization, and I was away from harp, and then I went to Israel. And that's when it all began. I went way off on a tangent here, but it was in Israel that I decided to become a harpist. So everything just fell into place. I fell in love. with the folk music around me. I subbed for half a season for the Jerusalem Symphony. I decided, though, that if I'm going to make it as a harpist, I should choose my school, and I have to get a scholarship, and I'll just apply to one school. I don't know why I put all these, levels of bridges or something that I had to like leap over. So I auditioned for Manhattan School of Music, and I got in, and I it was at that point that I decided to be a harpist. Although I think after even I graduated, I thought, well, what do I do now? Because you're trained classically and there's no job waiting for you at the end, you know? You have to wait till a harpist leaves an orchestra or something. So it was maybe later. So after I graduated, my husband and I decided to travel the world for a year. We got one of these round the world trip plane tickets, and I had this Clarsach that I had bought from Jack Ewell in Scotland. My husband's from Edinburgh, Scotland. I married this nice Jewish boy that I met in Edinburgh, that I met in Jerusalem from Edinburgh, and dragged him to New York. And then, that was my dog. And then he also knew how to juggle. So then I busked and he juggled around the world for a year. And we had friends that said, well, you know, you can just travel as long as you want if you can, you know, work on the streets. And so we did. We spent a whole year. And I think at the end of that, it was both like I fell in love more with folk music and connecting with people, that I wanted to get more into arranging and folk music and work with other people. And even though I did a little bit still more classical music, that's when the shift began. It's all related to travel.
Yeah, of course. And so you're talking about a shift, and it's really interesting because I think when you talk about your studies, you're talking about salzedo technique and the French approach, and you're talking about classical approaches to harp. And you've obviously, then you mentioned the orchestra. It's quite clear that your original foundational background is from classical, but I think most people will know you as playing the folk harp, as playing the lever harp, and as playing much more kind of community-based music. And your own arrangements. So yeah, maybe you could talk a little bit more about how that change happened, but also something that I know both of us are passionate about because we've worked together is not just how do I put this? Not just playing notes, not just learning tunes, not just learning Celtic music, but really making a beautiful sound. And that beautiful sound comes from that foundational technique. So I'm interested to hear you reflect on the positives and negatives of having that classical foundation, and then kind of that little transition to more folk and community-based music.
Yes, perfect question. So, because it's a real issue, like this almost is a divide, this like changing of like how much is technique versus following just music you love. And I couldn't have done any of the things I'm doing if I didn't have that foundation or classical background. But at the same time, I wish I had been trained using my ear more. I mean, I always listened. I loved, my focus was melody and tone. That was what I wanted to do, was phrasing. And I think phrasing and tone by playing other instruments became integral to it. I wasn't as concerned with learning lots of pieces or something. I wanted it to be beautiful from the beginning, I think, even as a kid. And I have been struggling and working really hard to be able to just sit down and play by ear, because I wasn't raised with that. So I try now when I'm teaching to really look at patterns and really teach people to listen, besides being just glued to the music. The notes, the written notes, that you sort of want, I think of it as like a more holistic approach. And I was raised in the age of classical harp, which has actually really changed now too, where everyone played almost the same pieces, the same books. There weren't that many books out. And you weren't encouraged to find your own voice or even to add introductions. You were focused on interpreting the music, as best you can, and making that music come alive. So, but if I didn't have that background in theory and in technique, it would have, it changes everything, really. I went to Israel as a complete classical harpist, not arranging, having real difficulty memorizing, and moved into an apartment with 3 other people. In this beautiful apartment, they're looking for roommates, and they wanted creative musicians, and artistic people. I thought, okay, great, I'm going to be here. And there was this crazy clarinetist who would have these jam sessions with local musicians till 2 a.m, and they'd say, "Bring out your harp, join in." And it's like, well, where's my part? There's no written part. And they're saying, no, it's just a G chord and a C chord or whatever, come on in. And so I would attempt to play with them. And then I realized, wow, some of these people that have just started to learn, they can just sit and play, and I'm waiting for my part. I want to change this. I need to learn how to arrange. I want to be able to just sit down and play music with other people. I don't want to sit and study a part for 6 months and then do a formal concert. I want to just sit and play music. And that was like really this light bulb moment for me. And I started working with 2 different Israeli musicians. One who was a flutist who always wanted to work with harp. So he had a lot of patience. He played old Jewish music and taught me a lot about style. Like, I want this rhythm. I want this kind of accompaniment, and he had the patience. And I started to be a source for people saying, oh, you're in Israel. I played for a Jewish wedding. Can you send me music? So I'd send music, and my husband said, look, you should publish a book of Jewish wedding music. Why are you just like randomly sending them out? Let's let it be out for people to access. And this is just when Sylvia Woods in the United States was starting her publishing company. And I got in on the ground floor, really. In the late 80s. Shows how old I am. I started Harp, around 1970. So I, in the 90s, did a lot of arranging. And it was like I could find my voice and freedom, find music I wanted to play, music I loved. I got to choose the music and make it work for the harp. And then I always loved playing and collaborating. And so I formed this ensemble with cello, percussion, and harp, because that was like a combination I just loved, not thinking. And I did pedal harp and lever harp, and I thought, okay, if you could, they did marimba and everything too, like the largest instruments to move around for a gig, like what kind of combination can you think of? And we actually went to the Edinburgh Fringe. And this is back in the days, like I remember showing up at the Edinburgh airport, and they just looked at all our instruments and they just said, just take them, just go, and it doesn't happen that way, I don't think, anymore. But it just opened up this like flow of creativity and love of music once I felt I was empowered. I had the agency to start arranging. And it was really because I was nurtured in Israel with people saying, well, think about, well, what kind of rhythm do you want? What kind of accompaniment do you want to this melody? And this is the story behind this melody. And whereas Sonatina number 3 never gave me that, So, so I'm passionate about arranging, about finding music that connects me to people and a place. And I sold my pedal harp when I moved to Shetland 3 years ago, and that was almost worth it just for the shock for people, like the shock effect. And it's like, no, I want the harp to be used creatively, and I sold it to a dancer, musician who is using it in a very creative way, because where would I put it while we're renovating this stone house and there's no place to put it? And so it all evolved, but then I've still been working with what is it like to just hear music and sit down and play. So I'm part of the Ernst Music and Dance Club, and I decided they had some written music that I'm not going to learn from the written music. I'm just going to listen to the tunes by ear, and for better or for worse, I'm going to learn to play with them. So that was quite a mouthful. You can edit out whatever you want.
We loved it. It was a lovely mouthful. It was great to hear the whole journey. But I do think it's time for us to actually listen to some of your music. So we're going to go to our first music clip, and maybe you can tell us once we've listened to it what the piece is and maybe the story behind it.
Okay.
Tell us about it.
So I was asked by Rhett Barnwell. He has a publishing company of just sacred music. He's in the Atlanta area. And I came up to Shetland thinking that we'd maybe have a summer home up here. So my husband was born and raised in Edinburgh. We took this cycling trip. So everything's related to travel. And ended up all the way up in Shetland and found all these stone houses that needed rescuing. So, and my husband had worked in construction and painting and building, and he thought we could renovate this. It ended up being a huge project, but we didn't know at the time, so that was arranged in a very hopeful time. We were just camping out one of the rooms of it's called Hammers. Hammers are rocky outcropping, so it's in the middle of a bay with like a horseshoe and then two rocky outcroppings. It's nothing to do with hammer. So at the Hammers, and it's when I realized I needed quiet. And I'm drawn to sacred music or music that has some deep meaning with it. Sometimes I feel like the melody can sort of has more of a power. And I, in just a couple of weeks, did a whole book for him. And so I'm Jewish, and I said, well, I don't know if I want to do hymns. And he said, well, how about Psalms, and Celtic Psalms. So I said, okay, great. So this is one of my first books that I arranged for Rhett, and I've done a series of books for him. And sat in Shetland at the Hammers, where it's quiet and it was summer, so there's just so much daylight, and just did these arrangements and thought, okay, I'm living in Tel Aviv area, city, and it's by the sea. It's interesting, but it's noisy, and I crave the quiet because then I can be much more creative. And that was like for me, the turning points. Like, so one of these first books was, okay, let's move to Shetland, or at least for 10 years or so, and let me focus on creativity where it's quiet, not when I'm racing around. So for me, it was sort of a pivotal point, and also to show that even if I've played for more than 50 years, there's something powerful about just beautiful melodies. That to be more advanced doesn't mean playing more notes. It's maybe working on the beauty of it, to play really beautiful phrases and just share beauty. And I worked as a therapeutic harpist for 14 years at a children's hospital in Israel, and really honed down what is it to phrase and be super, super simple, because when you're not feeling well, you don't want all this noise and all these extra notes. And then I got almost too simple. It's like you have to play at least a few strings. So it was like sort of coming out of that, like almost the silence, to find beautiful phrasing. So that was a pivotal moment for me.
Lovely. Amazing. And lots of your arrangements are, of course, available to purchase. And we're going to pull up your email address here so that people can purchase direct from you. Now, I know that people can purchase from different websites. Maybe you can tell us that in a moment. But it's always great to purchase direct from the artist, right? If you can.
Yeah, well, I have to buy from the publishers unless I publish them myself. So, you can ask me questions, write to me, and it depends where you are. If you want the book or if you want the PDF download, there's a lot of ways you can buy the book or my books.
Amazing. You've actually done lots of books, right?
Yeah, I don't know how many even. Yeah, lots.
Yeah, nice. Great. So why don't we talk about what's going on behind you? Because you've got two harps and you've got something exciting on the wall. So we've heard you play your beautiful red kamak in that little clip there. Did you choose the red?
No, but I wish I had, maybe, because it didn't matter to me almost what color. I guess I didn't want white. And I wanted a harp I could travel with and that I could also use in the hospital. So I actually used my kamak. I just lifted it up because it's really lightweight. It's fluorocarbon strings and carbon fiber and wood body. And I wanted desperately one. And I told them, the factory, I told Kamak, I said, I just want one with really good sound. It's less important the color. Whatever's out there, try a whole bunch of them and just send me which one is the best. And they chose this red one, and then I got it. I thought, of course it has to be red. This is perfect. So, no, I didn't choose it, but if I was smart, I would have said, I want the red one with a really good tone.
Nice. And that's what you got. And then your blue harp beside it?
So it's not mine. It's a student that had a dream of playing the harp, and her partner was really ill, and said, even if I pass away, follow your dream, get a harp. And so she bought a blue harp. It's a blue Salvi harp, and she's moving actually just across the street from me. And so she said, please take care of my harp while we're moving all the boxes and everything. And so I'm babysitting this harp. And then I have a few other harps that you can't see out of the screen for hire. I wrote a grant, and we have harps for hire up in Shetland. And so my husband was traveling with an old friend. He went to Vietnam. And of course he thinks, oh, strings, I'll bring you back a really special, it's like a koto, that you have to tune and adjust all these strings. I'll bring you back this great instrument. And I'm thinking, it's gorgeous, but I really don't want to tune any more strings. Maybe you could have brought me back a flute or something, but it's beautiful. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll learn it, but I never did. So we thought it's just too beautiful just to sit in a case. So I hang it up on the wall. And if anybody really knows how to play it and tune it, they can come to Shetland and give me some lessons.
Amazing. It does look beautiful there. And so let's talk about Shetland. So you're now living in Shetland, but you're not actually... It's not just Shetland, is it? Give us a bit more information, because it's like hardcore Shetland, right?
Yeah, Shetland extreme, maybe. And wasn't, when we moved up here, we weren't traveling a lot. We were just sort of up in Unst, not thinking how long it takes to get down to the mainland for festivals or concerts, because you have to take 2 ferries. So Shetland is, a whole bunch of islands, but really like 3, 4, or 5 main islands, 3 really main ones. 3 or 4. And so there's the mainland, and then there's this island of Yell, and then even north of it is Unst. So I'm in Unst, and like Haraldsvik is sort of north Unst. And but we have a beautiful stone house by the sea. And so I wanted to connect with more musicians here, and I'm playing tomorrow in Lerwick, and I have to plan my ferry. It takes about 2 hours, and I teach on Tuesdays in Lerwick, and it's like an hour, 45-minute commute, and depending on the ferries, so it could be almost 2 hours each way. So it's even Shetlanders, they think, wow, you came down from Unst. It's like, well, it's only a couple hours. And then I go to Canada, and they say, oh, 9 hours drive? Oh, no problem. So it's all a matter of perspective, I guess. But yeah, it's a bit extreme, but it's also quiet. I came for the quiet and the beauty, and I got that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been renovating your house now for how long has it been?
So that's a very touchy subject.
Okay.
Because it's supposed to have been done years ago. And so we should move in a few months. But there's been a lot of delays of finding workers and regulations, and it's almost there. So in January, I'm going to Israel for a month. My husband's there already, and the idea is to spend winters in Israel, where my daughter lives, and the rest of the time in Shetland, except I'm mainly here, and I'll just disappear for maybe a few weeks and get warm. So the concert and everything in January will be in Jaffa.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice, lovely. So you've been up there being inspired by the quiet and getting involved in the community music. And the next piece is quite linked to that we're going to listen to. So let's listen to your next piece, and you can tell us about the project that this has come from.
Thank you. So, Starry Nights of Shetland is a Shetland waltz, and the skies here are can be magnificent. They can also be very cloudy, but they can be just, layers of stars, and it's the first time I've ever seen the Northern Lights. So that bench that you saw at the beginning of that's a bench with a sound station. You can learn about a story about the Northern Lights with a beautiful Shetland accent, and then you press the music button, and you'll hear music I sort of improvised, composed, that's inspired by the Northern Lights. So I'd never seen the Northern Lights before I came to Shetland, and just the power of the changing colors and night sky, and you have to hunt for it. So there's like a Shetland Aurora Hunter Facebook group, like, oh, tonight's gonna be good, and then to go out, it's like rainbows. You just can't assume that it'll be there every day at 3:00 or something. And I've seen so many rainbows and just inspired by the sky. And so I'm working on several compositions inspired by the Northern Lights, this idea of using the harp as a soundscape for the night sky and the shifting of colors and sparkles, and then it looks very complicated on the notes page, so I'm still working on that, but I love the skies here, the night skies. And that's really what made me feel welcome in Shetland. Is I first came up here and they said, oh, we'd love harp music for the Northern Lights. It's like, wow, okay, I'm a musician just stepping foot into Shetland, and I love that.
Amazing. So just so I really understand, and our listeners do, there's a bench that's outside,
Yes.
outdoors, and you can sit on the bench, and there's a button on this bench, and your music just comes in.
Right. You have to press the button, and it comes like through your back, and with a beautiful view at the top of the hill, overlooking Unst. And they have sound stations in like all beautiful spots, important spots all around Unst. And the idea of Wild Skies Shetland charity was to encourage people to come up all year round, because we have beautiful skies often in the the autumn and the spring. You don't have to just come for June or July to Shetland. And so it made me feel really, really a part of the Unst community.
I think that's beautiful. And this is also in a book which people can publish. So we'll bring up your email. People can purchase. So we'll bring up your email again, so that people know how they can get in touch with you and have a look at some of these pieces. But how about if people they're inspired, they hear you talking about your music and also about the beauty of Shetland. Tell us about how they can visit.
Ooh. So I have harp retreats, and the idea really behind it is that it just comes from my life. I get so inspired by traveling, or like even in high school, going to Tanglewood, getting out of the usual space and then focusing on music was pivotal for me. And I want to share that experience. So I have rented this small cozy house overlooking the bay in Harrowswick and do little harp retreats. So it's really intimate. We can really focus on creativity and arranging and musicality, and come straight up to Shetland and then see the rainbows and the beaches. And I also have a retreat in Tuscany that focuses on beauty. Stay in a beautiful place, beautiful food, beautiful wine. What makes music beautiful? How do we work on tone and phrasing and really deep dive into beauty? And I do Scottish. It's not really a harp retreat. It's like meeting different harpists and harp, a harp builder, harp concerts in different places and music. And it's really sort of behind the scenes look at Scotland, and we go through Orkney and Shetland. And that always fills up because it's more of a touristy thing, but and which I love doing, but my passion is really retreats.
Amazing. And if anyone is interested in having a look at these retreats, there's a few that you still have spaces for next year, right? And how can people get in touch? Through your
Shetland
email?
and Tuscany. Through my email. I have a website, hammers.uk. And I can answer any questions and explain things to you. And so I do my April Harp retreat in Shetland right after the Edinburgh Harp Festival. So people can go to Edinburgh Harp Festival, which I know you'll be teaching at. And I think is one of the perks of coming to Scotland is that I can go every year to the Edinburgh Harp Festival and then take the ferry back and spend a week in Shetland.
Amazing. And so if anyone is nervous about that travel, they can come to Edinburgh Harp Festival, and maybe meet you, and then you'll be able to comfort them and know it's totally fine traveling back to Shetland, right?
So there's already a harpist that I'm sharing my cabin with that I'm taking the ferry back, but you can fly. You can fly from Edinburgh to Shetland. It's only like just over an hour. So it's on the map, it looks really daunting, but it isn't to get to Shetland.
Yeah. It's an amazing experience. So anyone who can have an opportunity to get up there, I'd highly recommend it because it is amazing. I actually travelled to Shetland with Scottish Opera.
Oh, wow.
I went up there on tour with Scottish Opera, and I have to say the ferry was choppy.
It depends. It depends. It depends on the weather. I mean, in the summer it's not choppy, but it can be choppy. And yeah, I get super seasick. So I just take a pill, sit down, sleep, wake up, I'm in Shetland. But I also fly.
Yeah.
And there's harps here people can use. So it's, they just have to show up.
Absolutely. Amazing. So I'd like to get back to a little bit about your career and what you've learned. So something I ask all of our guests is about the highs and lows of their harping career. And I'm going to ask you to start, as I do everyone, with your low. And that's so we can move to the high and finish in a nice, happy place. But a lot of our listeners, even though they are mostly adult learners, they often are interested in sharing their music and also just interested in the life of a professional harpist. And so I think often sharing those low points and how we got over them can help our listeners to understand how they can get over those low points too. So maybe you could start by sharing with us a low point of your career and how you managed to get through that.
Okay. Well, again, it's related to travel. This is quite the theme today. So it's hard to make a living being a harpist. And I had two young kids. So there I am in Minnesota trying to do the gigs that I love, and I didn't really always have regular gigs. And we had a lot of bills piling up. And my husband said, that spot where we busked in Australia, why don't you just go there for 10 days, make several $1,000s, and then come back? That's like the fastest way we can figure out how to make money. That's my dog here. And so I did that. We ordered, this is back in the days of cassettes. So we ordered cassettes to be manufactured, and I flew to Australia, which is very extreme, from Minneapolis to Adelaide, and busked for 8 days selling cassettes, because the cassettes would just fly off the table. They loved Celtic music there, and came back with a wad of cash and paid our bills. And I was thinking, I need a different career. I mean, I don't really want to have to fly to Australia and busk on the street just so we can pay our bills. This is crazy. And but then I wasn't really trained in anything else. So I don't know, it was like several years of sort of like, what am I doing? But then I also was at the cusp of where more people are learning the harp and arrangements, and delved more into arranging and getting books out. And I think working with other musicians and arranging is really what brought me out of it. Although I think my husband would say, oh, maybe you should go to Australia again. But it was pretty extreme.
Yeah.
So I consider that a low point, although he thought it was great.
Yeah, I can understand that. It is tough. And we've had quite a few guests, actually, who have talked about the fact that it can be tough to make a living trying to do what you love, and put it out there. But it's great that you're here and you've got through that, and you can always fly to Adelaide and make some money. So at least you've got that in your back pocket, because not everyone can do that.
Right. Well, now I have the Kamak harp that I can travel the world with. So if I have retreats, I just put my harp in my Dusty Strings case, and British Airways doesn't charge extra. KLM and Lufthansa doesn't always either. And I just take my harp and I can travel, which is really this amazing thing. I mean, back in the day when I traveled, they were less strict about baggage, but so I somehow seem to have sort of always been able to travel with a harp.
Oh, nice. Amazing. So now we get to hear the high point of your career and why that was a high point and what it meant to you.
So it's not a single thing. It's really doing therapeutic harp. The idea that I can use sound to help somebody. I think also like a low point before I was leaving, I was trying to, you end up just making somebody's wine taste better, or you're off in a dark corner because you're doing background music, which is part of life and festivity, and I actually really enjoy doing background music, but it just wasn't meaningful enough to me. And to work one-on-one with children in the hospital has just been like the most meaningful thing I've done. And then that opened up other doors. So I have a good friend in Israel, and I've played for some elderly people who are really ill, and she's a rabbi in Mumbai, India, and just for the fall, autumn holidays. And she said, I want you to bring your harp, and it's an aging community. I want you to bring the harp and play for people. So the idea that I'm used to playing for people maybe who aren't well. And so I flew to India. I flew to Mumbai in October with my harp, and I played in people's homes. And that to me is the high, that I can use the harp to connect to people that maybe I would never even speak to on the street or meet. Like I could play for, in Israel, for maybe somebody ultra-Orthodox, religious Jewish that maybe would just walk by me because I'm not in their community, but all of a sudden then their father's singing and I'm playing for their son, or I'm playing for, a Bedouin child in intensive care and the whole family's gathered around, that I can cross borders with the harp. So in some ways I sort of came full circle with this idea of international relations and music, that it's all woven in together, that the harp can be a bridge. And so then, I taught a blind Palestinian harpist, went to her village with a harp that I never would have if it wasn't the harp. So that's my high, really, is sort of an ongoing thing, that the harp is this bridge.
That's lovely. That's really lovely. Now, we have the absolute honour of having you as a guest artist in the How to Harp membership in January.
My honour.
And so it would be really great if you could give our members just a little hint. We're going to be treated to a concert and a workshop from you. What can we expect?
So focus on beauty, creating instant beauty, working with some arpeggios that maybe are slightly different, and to work on flow. And I think it's one of the things that makes music come alive on the harp, that we're really, really aware of phrasing and tone, and it doesn't have to be difficult. But we need to have, certain approaches. And so I want to share how I think about phrasing, and which is related to how I arrange. And I can't wait to do it.
Great. Really excited for that. Now, we're going to ask you to finish things up. It's been so lovely to chat to you. But we're going to ask you to finish things up by giving us, hopefully, one piece of advice. Most of our listeners are adult learners. So what's one piece of advice that you would impart onto our listeners out there?
To do what you love, not what maybe you think you have to do. So many people say, well, they asked me to play for church and I'm not ready, or this or that. It's like, no, if you're not ready, don't. But do music you love, not what you think you should do. I think a lot of people want to prove that they're competent, so they're playing stuff that's too difficult for them because they think they should be at that level. But just really share beauty, which is related to hopefully why you're playing the harp. Sharing beauty of music that you love, and find music you love.
That's lovely. That's beautiful advice to finish with. Sunita, thank you so very much for taking the time to chat with me today. And what's your dog's name? Because he's made a little appearance every now and again.
Lila. So it's very confusing because it's a boy. Lila means night in Hebrew, and he's black. Lila, you want to stand up and show your face a little bit? Yeah, here he is. Here's Lila.
Oh, hello.
Lila's a beauty. And He doesn't know it's a girl's name. I wasn't even aware of that, so I wasn't thinking, I was just thinking night. And so, yeah, he's all black and he's beautiful.
He's gorgeous. Archie. Thank you for letting us meet him. We're a big fan of the furry family here, so we always, and he's going to go for a walk now, right?
Absolutely. Rain or shine, he loves it. If I can throw the ball, he's set.
Nice. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us, and I can't wait to see you in your concert and your workshop in January.
Thank you, Heather. It's really been a privilege.
Huge thanks to Sunita for joining me on the podcast. It was such a pleasure to hear her story and her perspective on harp and life. Next week is one of our regular Harpy Tutor Chats where I chat with Angela about all things harp. In this next episode, we'll be exploring the idea of intrinsic motivation inspired by my chat with Dr. Eric Booth at the end of 2025. And we're looking at what this really means for you as a harpist and a learner, and really how it touched us as harpists and learners ourselves. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, comment and share it. All of that really helps the podcast grow and reach more harpists. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.